Hey guys, it's Kate and this is the second video in the watercolor color theory series that I'm doing. In this video, I will tell you about staining and non-staining colors, what's the difference and how to know which colors are staining and which are not, and how you can use them to get the best result. So, let's begin. First, let's talk about what is meant by the term staining. You can try to remove paint from the paper by adding water and then gently scrubbing with your brush and lifting it up with a dry, clean tissue. Colors that lift off easily, without barely leaving a trace, are the non-staining ones. But you will notice that there are those that leave a visible residue of color behind, no matter how much you scrub. Those are called staining colors. This happens because some pigments easily bind with the paper and thus are harder to remove. The non-staining colors, on the other hand, do not react with the paper as much and will leave only a kind of a coating that will lift off by applying water and gentle scrubbing. Let's compare some staining and non-staining colors to make it more clear. I have staining colors on the left and the non-staining ones on the right. I soak up the paint with a tissue while it's still wet to see how much color I can lift off while it's still wet. I do this to see the difference between how the paint lifts off immediately after you apply it and how it lifts off after it has been dry for some time. Now you can see that the bright red lifted off the paper a lot better than the dioxazine purple, for example, but it has left an edge where the paint has been. Both green and purple also left a visible residue, for the only difference is that the part of the purple color that I lifted off while it was still drying is a lot lighter. Now, let's look at the non-staining colors. All of them lift off very easily off the paper. You can see the clear difference between the two groups. I did press onto the paper when lifting the wet Cinerias, hope I pronounced that right, Cinerias blue, and as a result I got a stain that kind of pressed itself into the fibers of the paper and I was not able to get rid of it no matter how much I scrubbed. So watch out for that when you do lift the paper, when you do lift the paint. It's a great idea to add this quality into your paint swatch or your color journal. I have my transparency swatch from the previous video that I did for this series, and I will add this paint quality here so I can have the reference at a glance. If you'd like to know how to make a swatch like this yourselves, you can check out the first video of the series where I talk about transparency glazing and how to mix darks, and I will leave the link in the description. What I do is I paint a small square opposite each color and I let it dry. As soon as the paint is dry, I try to lift off just a small part in the center of the square. Then I let it dry again for a longer period and repeat the lifting process all over, but this time I try to remove the whole square of color. You will notice that it is a lot easier to remove paint as soon as it dries, and it's a lot harder after it has been dry for some time. Now, I want to warn you about scrubbing the paper. You should use a stiffer brush for that, and I would not suggest you use your watercolor brushes, especially not the expensive ones, because it might ruin the bristles of the brush, and I will also show you how clumped up my brush became after I did the scrubbing for this tutorial. But another thing is that you might want to watch out for is ruining the surface of your paper. It's a huge thing to watch out for as it will ruin your painting. Any color you layer over the part that you scrub too much, it will just not look good. It's not gonna look right no matter what you do with it. Another cool thing about staining colors is that they work great for darks, as they will soak into the white of the paper, and even if you use transparent color for the darks, the white won't shine through as much as it would with the non-staining pigments. I have already talked about the darks in the first video of the series, how you can use the transparency or the opacity of the pigments to mix your darkest darks, but here I'm using a staining dioxazine purple and I'm layering 3 different colors over it: ivory black, French vermilion, and lemon yellow. You can see how the layer of purple underneath gives that shade that kind of darkens the whole mixture. and it does not lift off. So, is staining good or bad? It's neither. It all depends on how you use the paint. If you like to glaze, then you can take advantage of staining pigments for layering, as when you layer multiple glazes on top of one another, even if the color will lift up with the application of any successive glazing, the paint will still leave a residue on the paper even if it lifts off. Here's an example of two reds. One on the left is this non-staining one, and the other one is the staining. I glaze over both of them so as to go over the edge of the red so that you can see the difference more clearly. You will notice how after multiple glazes, carmine starts to lift off and mixes into the yellows that I layer on top. I did scrub a bit too much. Usually when you layer, you use more transparent layers and you don't pass with your brush as many times as I did, but I just wanted to show how the paint does lift off with successive layers of color. Color is beautiful when you know how to work with it, and there's nothing better than to learn something new. And this is it for this tutorial. I hope you did find it useful, and if so, like, subscribe, and leave me a comment if you have any questions or if you have any suggestions for future videos. And stay tuned for more tutorials. I will be posting the third video of this watercolor color theory soon. But until then, check out my other video tutorials, and I will see you soon. Ciao!